One, long as we're in America, we will bring up a person known as the American Moses.
Harriet Tubman.
Oh, actually, that would also be a cool one, but that'd be for a different one because she wasn't seen as a religious figure.
Sorry, please continue.
And that would be Brigham Young.
Okay. Controversial figure.
Very controversial figure. In fact, it is even hard, even though he only lived like 150, 170 years ago, and yet it's still difficult to find reliable data on him because you only get the extremes, right? You only find people who thought he was, who believed that he was a prophet of God.
Literally a prophet.
Yeah, literally a prophet of God, and people who thought he was a monster.
The literal devil.
The literal devil. And yeah, that's kind of what you get from the sources of that time.
Mark Twain famously despised the man.
Though there was a fascinating thing. There actually almost became this odd respect when Mark Twain actually came out. But this is not your lightning round, Mike.
Sorry, please continue.
Yes, there were some fascinating back and forth between Mark Twain and Brigham Young. But one of the things that's more fascinating about Brigham Young was I'm going to call it the kingdom, the empire, the theocracy that he created. Before Utah became a state, it was proposed that they join as a territory of Deseret, right? There was almost a state of Deseret. Now, there's a reason why there is not a state of Deseret, because first of all, this was an entire area that would have been about half again as big as the United States itself at this time. So this is a geographical area, I ran the math, larger than Germany and France combined. Would have been about twice as big as Texas is now.
Okay.
Okay. This was huge. By the way, the federal government said no.
Okay. Give us some context for those of us who well, not those of us, but for listeners who did not grow up in the southwestern United States. Give us some context of when we are, and briefly who Brigham Young even was.
Okay. So, the religion in question is formerly known as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, more colloquially known as the Mormons, founded by Joseph Smith, actually in New York. So, it starts at the eastern part of the United States, and I won't get too far into the theology, basically saying that the original Church of Christ has been restored, and that Joseph Smith, is its prophet. It is not received well by the people living in America in that time.
No.
There are still lots and lots of converts to this cause, but they are consistently driven out of wherever they are from.
Yes, quite famously, there is an extermination order.
Yes,
put out
they get
by
all
the
way
governor
up
of Missouri.
Missouri, who is incredibly afraid of these people swinging the vote because they are a very large group of people. They are also famously anti-slavery, and Missouri was a pro-slavery state at that time. And you had this huge population of legal citizens who can vote. And so, yes, Governor Lindburn Boggs actually issues an extermination order. This is happening in America, right in the Constitution, freedom of religion. And he says, anyone who believes this, we are going to kill. By the way, that was only rescinded in the late 1900s.
1970s, wasn't it?
1970s.
Didn't get a formal apology until the early 2000s, I want to say.
Yes, but not your lightning round.
Sorry.
Okay, we got to keep this, got to end this somehow.
Okay.
Anyway, and then Joseph Smith is killed.
Yes.
Okay, at a place called Carthage, a place in Missouri. And at this point, the Mormons, the members of this church, have grown to incredible numbers, right? but in a very hostile environment. And so they leave the United States entirely and go out to what is then, at that point, Mexico. Right? A lot of the Western United States was owned by Mexico, right? New Mexico, Santa Fe, California. These were all Mexican settlements. And so they move out to essentially a place that nobody wanted. This was mountainous desert. Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, parts of California, most of Nevada. You got this huge place that there really wasn't anyone else there because it was really hard to farm. It's still not great for farming. I know some Utah farmers, and they are the most tough, determined people I've ever met.
Persistent.
Because, I'm sorry, farming at some of these altitudes is just not reasonable. And yet, here they were, this vast amount of people. And Brigham Young, rather than just bringing everybody in and just trying to maintain life, sends them out. By his decree, right? He would just tell people, you go, and he'd send them off on missions, is what it would be called, right? You'd gather some people, send them on a mission, but it'd be a mission, you go figure out how to smelt iron in southern Utah. You figure out how to grow cotton. And he formed anywhere from 400 to 500 settlements. Okay?
Wow.
I cannot think of anyone in the modern age who is, settled on that scale. And we aren't going to get too far into it because lightning round, I just want to put 2 quick stories out. First of all, to this day, Utah, especially the Salt Lake City, is known as having the widest streets of any major U.S. city. That goes all the way back to Brigham Young, right? We have these wide 4 lanes of traffic, plenty of room for cars right in the middle of our downtown. And that was because, and I quote, he wanted streets wide enough that a wagon team can turn around without resorting to profanity. That is an actual quote from Brigham Young. And that, of course, worked very well as modernization happened. Another one. This will be my last one.
Okay.
Obviously, all problems eventually came to him. And there were these women who were complaining about how there are only ever male doctors. Now, this wasn't just Utah. This was pretty much worldwide at the time, right? Women at that point weren't even much allowed to be nurses, even. Right?
When is this about?
Sorry. This is
mid 1800s?
Yes, mid 1800s. I want to say 1848 is about the area we're in at this point of this story.
Okay.
And so he creates another mission. He gets, I think it was 2 or 3 women, and he tells them, go back east, right? He sends them out of Deseret, back east, to go and learn the medical arts, right? Sends them out to get this knowledge and bring it back. And so they go out and they learn, and I don't think they were able to become like official doctors or whatever because of the sexism at the time, but they are able to essentially acquire this knowledge, bring it back to Utah, spread it through the women in Utah, create this league of women doctors who very quickly almost outcompete and shove out the male doctors, to where that becomes an active problem that the male doctors are not able to keep up with these women doctors that Brigham Young created through this mission. We lack this medical knowledge. Go get it. Bring it back here.
Your mission is to go back into hostile territory.
Yes, Mormons were still very, very much hated at that time.
And break into a profession that is still
very
ferociously misogynist.
Yes. And
Okay.
yes, acquire that, your mission.
Should you choose to accept it.
Again, you got to figure what their religion and their faith was. This was, God wants you to go get this knowledge and bring it back.
Mission from God.
Mission from God. Go become a doctor. Come back.
Become
teach
a
everybody
doctor.
else. But yeah.
Wow.
So that'll be my last one. And again, Brigham Young, it's very much a love him or hate him sort of thing. Very controversial figure. But I did like his approach to some of these things. One of the great ironies is that when not Deseret, right? They chopped it up into a whole bunch of other states, right? Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Arizona. All these states were all part of Deseret, but the federal government did not want this big and powerful of a state entering under the control of largely just one man.
Of a functional theocracy.
Of a functional, very functional theocracy.
Right.
And so they chopped up a million pieces and insisted on other governors. And it really was a calculated thing to just try to divide this a little bit, lest they get, too uppity or whatever. But yeah, it was ironic that when it was under Brigham Young, women had the vote. When they gained statehood, that vote was taken away. And it wasn't until much later that women regained the vote in the United States. But yeah, women actually lost the vote when Utah and again these surrounding states joined the Union as states. And that was just kind of, well, stupid. If we were to put a word to it. And yes, I believe, again, it's contested. But supposedly the first woman to vote in the United States was in Utah. But like I said, they had the vote before that and lost it.
Just when it was Mexico.
Well, it kind of became a sort of United States territory anyways, because the Mexican War happened around the same time that they were going out there. In fact, they just left the United States. They actually immediately got a call to have some of their young men, I mean like fathers still, but go and fight in the Mexican-American War. So even as they were crossing the plains, a lot of their men actually left to go fight on behalf of the United States against Mexico. And so, yeah, those of you who know about the Mexican War, that is actually where we gained a lot of that territory. So yes, they moved out into Mexico and actually contributed into making it at least owned by the United States, even if it wasn't officially a state or even official territory.
Wow. Bit of a tangled political situation there, isn't it?
Quite.
Bit of a conflict of interest.
Less than you'd think. Because, sorry, now I'm being bad at the lightning round.
Yeah, right? Lance. You're terrible at this.
It is seen as a great irony that the same government who would not protect this religious group, right? They were burned out, and they asked the federal government time and time again to be protected, would not, right? Again, there was that whole Civil War thing starting to build, right? This was a slavery, anti-slavery thing going on. And so the federal government, not only because of the religious thing, but because of the political climate, wouldn't really touch it. And so, yeah, wouldn't be protected. They finally had to leave. And then the government comes and says, hey, help us come fight the war. And a lot of people see that as like you got a lot of nerve. Until you understand someone asked for it. Brigham Young. He asked the federal government to form a Mormon battalion. All those men fighting in the Mexican War, which, by the way, they never actually fought in any real battles. But they took all their wages and sent it back to their families. They financed the Exodus with the Mormon Battalion, as it was called.
Huh.
Yeah, it was seen as this big, how dare you ask us for help when you wouldn't protect us. It was requested by Brigham Young. This guy had all the chess pieces moving. Like I said, love him or hate him, you got to respect him, because that guy had all the things moving. He was 5 steps ahead all the time.
It's a bold move.
It was a very bold move.
To flee a country and then be like, hey, by the way, were you interested in stealing this country that we just
Well,
just
they were
fled
already
into.
in the middle of the Mexican-American War.